Oh, it's 16, so I'm fucking retarded. Also, I was confused as fuck of what the hell they were talking about. That whatever, but all I know is I did not go past room 3. I exited every time at room 3. Yeah, I know, but I'd rather people tell me what it is instead of fucking, like, show me a fucking video. Like, please. But I got it now. Like, I understood it, but I'm still not going past room 3. Now, I know how to do it now. It's just I'm not doing it. Because I'm only going for 3 rooms. Hold on. Yeah, but that don't matter because I keep failing. Like, I'll get to room 4 and it fails. Like, there's no point in doing that. My luck has been terrible. If my luck wasn't as bad as it is, I would. But, like, it's genuinely atrocious. You just get something that spams the E button, and then you click yes, and then you wait 5 seconds for the second one or whatever. Like, I peeped. Like, I know what it is. It's just, I'm not doing that. That seems way too atrocious. Or no, I'm gonna do it, but I'm not going past room 3. The amount of times I fail at room 4, not worth it. I might have less points in the clan, but literally I can just tell them it's RNG. Like, I can't help it. I think they much rather me get some points instead of 0. What are we anyway? Number 9. You see? Blum's going up again. This guy's a YouTuber. Like I said, if we get top 10, that'd be cool, but like I said, I more care about getting this fucking pet. Not the one for the glamour. Talking about. I legit said every time I open the fourth door, it gives me the clown, so there's no point in me going to room 4. It happened like 3 times in a row today. So I'm not going past room 4. I'm gonna open the third door and that's it. Oh, that's sad. I just saw a post on Twitter. It was from Billy Mays' son, and apparently he went to his father's grave and somebody put someone put a bottle of OxyClean on his grave. That'd make me smile happy as fuck if I was his kid. And like, these people are retarded, but that's funny. They don't even feel real. It's been fucking 14 years since he died. That's crazy.
Talking about the mass hysteria iceberg. Mass
Video I got today. I don't think I've reached the end at all today, but whatever. Cool. What happens, I guess.
hysteria is most often described as an enhanced feeling of fear or panic that is transmitted through a population by either a real or perceived threat. The most common cases that we think of when it comes to mass hysteria tend to be about news reporters giving wrong information and causing people to freak out, or world leaders telling people that they're about to be invaded when they're actually not, etc. However, as we're going to see from this iceberg, mass hysteria is not exclusive to that and also includes things like psychosomatic illnesses. In other words, when
Nah, I turned that shit off. This is mass hysteria. The mass hysteria iceberg. Which mass hysteria is like, uh, best way I can describe mass hysteria, if you don't know what it is alright, this is gonna sound racist, but it's not. You know how, like, when black people, they see one person running, they all start running? It's a thing where, like, one person starts freaking out, and then everybody starts freaking out. And I guess it's a tier list of, like, the biggest ones. Something like that, or times in history there's weird mass hysteria.
whenever someone thinks they have an illness and their body begins to show symptoms of it. Hysteria has led to some of the weirdest events in human history, and we're going to talk about some of them today. A couple things of note before we get started. For one, I am going to be using this iceberg pretty much as a guideline. Or in other words, I'm really interested in stories of mass hysteria where there seemed to be a very small or non-existent threat that caused a bunch of people to freak out, rather than like overreaction. For example, the first tier in this iceberg is stuff like Y2K or the Red Scare in the United States, and other cases where people just kind of overreacted, and that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the weird stuff. So for that reason, I'm cutting out the first tier, and we'll be using the majority of the iceberg while skipping over a few other terms. For example, one of the terms on a later tier is dihydrogen monoxide scares, which is just whenever news reporters said that there was dihydrogen monoxide in the water as a joke, and people freaked out. Not really mass hysteria, just people being dumb. And as always on this channel, if I don't think it's interesting and don't think it's worth my time to relay to you, then I'm not going to talk about. However, there is another YouTuber who, in research for this iceberg, I figured out that they followed a slightly revised version of this iceberg to a T, and that is That Dane. I will link his video in the description. He has a ton of really cool icebergs on his channel, and his
Feel it.
video over this iceberg was really good, so if you want to know
Uh, it has to be. In 8 days.
about more of those points I skip over, check him out. I will also be adding some of my personal favorite cases of mass hysteria to this iceberg because, again, I think they're cool. The other thing I want to mention is as this iceberg goes down, we're going to get into some that are related to religious miracles or spiritual experiences, and if at any point in this video you feel that I'm discrediting your beliefs because it's under the label of mass hysteria, I am not saying that I am right and you are wrong. I'm just going with the sort of standard story that science explains it as. That doesn't mean that these can't be supernatural experiences. I'm just talking about the generally accepted ideas. But with all that being
I already said it before. Literally, when I wake up and see I still haven't got it, I get that image of that guy pickaxe mining, and he walks backwards, leaving at the sound right before he hits diamonds. Yeah, the leader. Yeah, and even if I was lying, you're too stupid to realize it. So no, the leader. What I've been, whenever people come to the stream that don't play this game, I've been telling them basically I'm going for die. Cause basically the same thing. Is doing useless shit to get a useless item.
said, stick around as we're going to talk about some of the weirdest cases of mass delusion and panic in human history. But first of all, I need to make an announcement. So for starters, let me fix this. The products I received this month can take Scentbird's quizzes on their website and then from there get a feel.
I've already told you what it is, Dark. It's a huge pet in the game.
for what you may want to order for that month. And thanks to Scentbird, today if you go to the link in the description and use discount code Wendigoon3, you can get your first month for 55% off. That's right, for your first month you can have access to any of these designer fragrances for only $7. Scentbird is available in the US and Canada, so if you're in that region, get in on this amazing offer while you can. Again, link in the description, you really don't want to miss out. Thank you all so much for watching the ad. Thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring the video, it really does mean the most. I hope you enjoyed, check them out, and we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. There will also be a link to the original iceberg image in the description as well, and since I'm kind of breaking up the order of it and making it kind of my own, this is my tier 1. The strawberry sugar virus is related to a Portuguese TV show known as Strawberries with Sugar. The show was essentially a teen soap opera that dealt with high school kids and their day-to-day dramas, and for that reason the show was watched by a primarily preteen and child audience. In an episode that aired in May of 2006, the characters in the show began to develop an intense sickness. In the episode, the characters began to develop symptoms such as dizziness, trouble breathing, and rashes over their body. In the following days, across 14 different schools in Portugal, over 300 middle and high school students began to develop dizziness, trouble breathing, and rashes over their body. This caused several schools to temporarily close, believing that a disease was beginning an outbreak. However, other than a few kids who it turned out were just having an allergy attack, none of the children had any disease present in their body. Not only that, but the symptoms were only shown to be in middle school and high school students, meaning that this illness and its physical symptoms are believed to be entirely a case of mass hysteria across several kids in Portugal who just so happened to watch the same episode. The dancing plague of 1518 is probably the most famous case of mass hysteria, and there's good reason for it. In July of 1518 in Strasbourg, a woman only known in history as Frau Trophea began silently dancing in the middle of the town. Over the course of a week, she continued to silently dance in the middle of town, and about 36 people slowly joined her. Bystanders who saw the scene said that the people were not enjoying themselves, and as a matter of fact were very distressed and unable to stop moving. Doctors who showed up at the time, because understanding of medicine was limited at best, said that perhaps they just had really hot blood, because that was a thing that it was believed happened to people, and the best solution was to just dance even faster to get it out of their system. So to encourage more intense dancing, the town had a stage built and brought in musicians to play music, which made the problem a lot worse. With it becoming such a spectacle and now there being a performance at the same time, people began to join in on the dancing and were then unable to stop. This went on for 4 months, tallying up a total of 400 victims, with several of these people breaking their bones, collapsing, and even dying from exhaustion. Finally, in September, several of the men from the town began carrying the people who were still dancing up to the top of a mountain shrine where they were prayed over and assumedly stopped. The people of the time believed that Saint Vitus could curse people to the dancing plague, and some to even dance until they were dead. The historical guesses of the case aren't much better, as the two leading theories are perhaps it was a cult who secretly did this entire thing and danced until they were dead just to prove a point, or possibly a moldy bread that caused people to hallucinate, even though those exact symptoms have never been seen anywhere else in history. With no really good explanation of this case, many chalk it up to mass hysteria. The Hammersmith ghost refers to several sightings of a supposed ghost that would attack bystanders in Hammersmith, London. According to those that believed in the Hammersmith ghost, they said that someone had died in London the year before in 1802 and was not given a proper burial. Because of it, his ghost was attacking the people of the town. The official story was that it was a tall man wearing all white. However, there were several stories of the man having horns or glowing red eyes or wearing these long flowing white robes. Some of the earliest sightings were that of 2 women who on separate occasions said they ran into the ghost and were so freaked out in the days following that they died of shock. Other people who said they were just walking around Hammersmith said the ghost would run at them from alleys and begin screaming and shouting, and everyone was afraid that the ghost was going to eventually start killing people. Because of this, several night patrols began to form these small mob groups throughout Hammersmith, and at night would patrol the streets trying to catch the ghost. This culminated when Francis Smith was patrolling the streets with a shotgun and saw a bricklayer walking towards him in his all-white uniform. Francis, believing this to be the ghost, quickly said something to the effect of "What are you? Who are you?" before he fired and killed the bricklayer. In the court trial that followed, the bricklayer's wife said that she had told her husband that he needs to cover up his all-white uniform or else one of the mobs will think he's the Hammersmith ghost. Quick side note about that court trial, by the way, it was one of the weirdest in British history because the argument was that he was not guilty by reason of intent, but then the court had this really long argument where they eventually came to the conclusion that intent to kill something is just as good in a murder case as intent to kill the person. And the jury originally returned with a verdict of manslaughter, and the judge said that wasn't allowed because he was either acquitted or meant to kill the bricklayer. So they then gave him first-degree murder, which carried out a sentence of hanging. But then the judge didn't know what to make of that, so he wrote a letter to the king, and the king ended up giving him 1 year of hard labor. So this guy went from manslaughter to first degree to a year of work. It actually reshaped a lot of UK law and wasn't really settled until a 1984 Court of Appeal. Keep in mind all this happened in 1804. Just fun story. During this trial, one man came forward saying that he was the Hammersmith ghost, but he had only ever dressed in a white bedsheet to scare somebody one time and never did it again, implying that perhaps while there was a ghost in the first place, the rest was just complete hysteria that ate up the town and made everyone go crazy. And after this court trial, there were no further sightings of the Hammersmith ghost. Junebug epidemic refers to a case in the 1960s at a textile factory in South Carolina. One day at this factory, the workers opened.
What? What happened, my people? Yeah, I would hate not having a job for a whole year, like right now. I would hate that. It hasn't been a year for real. Huh. I would hate it. Also, yeah, I would hate to do that, but it was either that or get hung. So, I mean, I would choose the labor.
Up a shipment from out of the country, to which whenever they opened it, a June bug flew out. Later that day, a few workers complained of feeling nausea and dizziness as well as vomiting, and one of them identified having a bug bite on their arm. Connecting it to the aforementioned June bug, several said that perhaps the June bug had bit them and transferred some overseas sickness. In the next couple days, 62 people reported the exact same symptoms in the factory of vomiting, nausea, and dizziness, and some even had to be hospitalized. After going through thorough medical checkups, only a few of them had any bug bites on their body, and none of them had any notable diseases in their system. The official story is that patient 0 was bit by a bug, and being worried about the June bug became ill from worry, to which after that, every subsequent person who became sick was simply sick on their own accord.
That'd be happening to me. That's why anytime I got a symptom wrong with me, I don't be on a WebMD. I'll go on there and be like, man, I'm coughing a little. If you're dying.
Meaning the June bug epidemic was a phantom illness falsely blamed on a single June bug. The 1983 West Bank fainting epidemic occurred on March the 21st of 1983. At a girls' school on the West Bank, 6 girls began coughing and feeling ill, saying that they smelled a foul odor. After this, other girls in the school also began coughing and saying that they could smell an odor as well. Several female soldiers came to escort these girls to a nearby hospital for a checkup, and during the escort, the soldiers reported similar symptoms as well. In all, on the first day, 32 people reported feeling sick, with some even fainting. Because of the intense political climate at the time, many of the nearby news sources began saying that this was a gas attack meant to kill or possibly sterilize the women at the school. Over the next few days throughout the West Bank, Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem, people began reporting feeling sick and being poisoned by the poison that was mentioned on the news, with some developing fits of vomiting, rashes, and passing out across all of these cities. At this point, it began affecting both sides of the Israeli-Palestine conflict, so much so that they were declaring open war over it, accusing the other of gassing their citizens. In all, 943 people were hospitalized, and the United Nations had to step in to determine what the cause was. It was determined that perhaps on the first day of all of this at the original school, perhaps there was a gas leak in the walls that caused the girls to become dizzy and feel faint. However, after this, despite 943 hospitalizations, there was no evidence of any gas or true vector of sickness in any cases reported. And the official story is that people were so worried by the events that took place at the school, a psychosomatic illness set in, and their body began developing symptoms that they thought they might acquire. The miracle of the sun occurred on October the 13th of 1917, when 3 local shepherd children said that Mother Mary was going to appear and perform miracles in Fatima, Portugal. According to these 3 children, they had spoken with Mother Mary, and she told them to round people up because she was going to make her power known before humanity. This went on for several weeks and became such a popular story in the region that it's confirmed historically that somewhere between 30 to 40,000 people showed up, with accounts at the time saying it was more than 100,000. According to all of the witnesses that were there that day, the sun began hurling itself down to earth before it stopped, zigzagged back up into place, and began shooting out colors of green, purple, blue, and other fiery apparitions. Many saw this as a legitimate miracle, and as a matter of fact, Pope Pius VII sent cardinals to check out the stories of Fatima, Portugal, and declared it an official canon miracle by the Catholic Church, with official historical records saying that maybe 40,000 people just were dumb and had no clue what they were looking at. I also have to mention that one of the lead scientific theories is that everyone just stared at the sun at the same time and didn't know what happens if you look at the sun, and that's what the miracle was. Just people staring at the sun for 10 minutes and hallucinating a bunch of colors. We are now on to Tier 2, or at least the Tier 2 that I've butchered this iceberg and turned it into. So we don't know the exact year that the Meowing Nuns took place, because a book written in 1844 as part of a medical text described the story as a recollection and happening sometime in the Middle Ages. According to that story, there was a convent of nuns in Central Europe where one day, for seemingly no reason, one girl decided to meow. The other nuns around her, thinking it was funny, joined her in the meowing. This continued to spread until eventually every single nun in the convent would join together for several hours of the day and meow loudly. The people of the nearby neighborhood asked them to stop, to which they would reply with meows, and eventually the town conscripted an army to go to the nuns with whips and threatened to beat them if they didn't stop because it was so annoying. This caused the nuns to stop, and the entire thing is considered mass hysteria in history. However, I like to think that this was just an elaborate troll because that's hilarious. The Halifax slasher was a phenomenon that happened in Halifax, England in November of 1938. It began when 2 women rushed home one night saying that they had been attacked by a man who chased them with a mallet. After this initial story spread across the papers, other women began reporting that they were being chased by somebody, although at first the slasher never gained any victims. Although several women who who had cut clothing said that the slasher had chased them and they just managed to get away as he would cut the hem of their clothes. This gave him the name of the Halifax Slasher, and similar to the Hammersmith Ghost, mobs began to be formed in the streets to stop this man who was almost attempting to kill women. This is all well and good up until they started falsely accusing people of being the slasher, because these mobs would be out at night and see like a guy walking alone and be like, there he is, get him, and then like a bunch of people got beat up over that. One guy who was new to Halifax was so berated by people who stood outside of his house chanting for his death that the police had to escort him to and from work. Around the time that it got that intense, several of the women came forward saying that they lied about it and they had actually cut their clothes and they just wanted the attention. And from there, the Halifax Slasher kind of died out, but it's historically remembered as a bunch of people who all got really mad and started beating people up and hunting down a killer when the killer never even existed. Or even if he did exist, never even killed someone. He was just like really bad at being a serial killer. Spring Hill Jack happened in London in 1837. A lot of these are people in like the British London Halifax area just pretending that something interesting is happening. Anyway, in 1837, a woman claimed that she was attacked by a tall man in an alley who was very handsome and had a devilish laugh. The most striking detail being that the man had claws over his fingers. The next day, a similar looking man jumped in front of a carriage that was going down the street, causing the carriage to steer off the road and careen into a wall. According to onlookers, the man then laughed and leaped over a 9-foot wall to escape. This began the legend of Spring Hill Jack, and several people of London said that he was either a ghost or the devil causing mischief on Earth. The sightings became more and more elaborate, everyone maintaining the idea of him having claws on his hands, but others saying that he had the ability to breathe blue and white fire and had glowing red fire for eyes. The majority of stories were women following men into dark alleys who would then take off their coat and reveal themselves to be a tall, devil-looking figure who would breathe fire and in some cases cause women to die of fright. There were even stories of soldiers seeing a man bound through the woods and over walls some 20 feet tall. Despite all of this, no one in any of the sightings was ever identified, and sightings of Spring Hill Jack went from 1837 all the way to 1904, with spiritualists then and even now believing this to be a demon or the devil himself interacting with people on Earth, or as science says, a case of mass hysteria. The Belgium Coca-Cola crisis occurred in Belgium on June the 8th of 1999. That day at an elementary school in Belgium, 26 children at the same school said that they got headaches and became nauseous after drinking a Coke bottle that they said smelled funny. This story went to the news, and in the following days, hundreds of children all over Belgium also said that they became sick after drinking Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola launched a thorough investigation and found that there was absolutely nothing wrong with any of the drinks that were shipped out. Even examining the specific bottles that the children supposedly got sick on, and the only explanation being, perhaps with the first kids, the bottles were being stored in somewhere that had like a moldy air because it may have smelled a little funny, but there was nothing in the drink or on the bottle itself. And for all the hundreds of kids in the days following, there was absolutely zero explanation. However, Coca-Cola, never having dealt with a crisis like this before, didn't know the golden rule of customer service, which is the customer is always right, and instead made a PR announcement that all of your kids are lying to you, and this is actually a case of mass hysteria, and they're making it up, and you should tell them to shut up. I'm summarizing a little bit, but that was the basic gist. This made parents furious, saying that Coca-Cola was willingly poisoning their children and were now trying to cover it up. Because of this bad PR, over 30 million bottles of Coca-Cola products had to be recalled from Europe, and eventually the president of Coca-Cola was fired. But as stated before, there were no actual diseases or recognizable symptoms, and most people do believe, even if a little harsh, that it was a case of children experiencing hysteria. The Monkey Man of Delhi happened in May of 2001, where several people in New Delhi, India said that they were attacked by a monkey man.
Oh, it's
More
exotics.
specifically, people said that at night they would be attacked by a 4-foot tall creature covered in black hair with a metal helmet and metal claws with glowing red eyes and buttons on its chest. They said that it would run at them, begin screaming and hitting them before it would begin leaping over buildings to get away. People in the region lost their minds over this. There began to be riots and protests saying that the government is trying to hide the monkey man from them. Mobs began to form in the streets at night trying to find the monkey man, and in one case, a short, bald monk was walking along the street at night when a mob saw him and nearly beat him to death, thinking him to be the monkey man. Dozens of people said that they had been attacked, and 3 people fell to their deaths when they were standing on buildings and began screaming that the monkey man is chasing them before they jumped off and died. But as you can imagine, no monkey man was ever found, and it's believed that the entire thing was a case of people getting too worked up over nothing. Biting nuns is the slightly more intense version of the meowing nuns thing. So this happened in 15th century Germany at a convent of nuns, and similar to the meowing nuns thing, one nun decided to bite another nun as a joke, to which that nun bit someone else, and like a zombie plague, eventually the entire convent of nuns was just biting each other. This story picked up notoriety as being weird, and messengers delivered it to other convents, to which they began doing the same thing, and eventually convents beginning in Germany and eventually in Holland, Rome, Italy, and the Netherlands all had these castles full of women biting each other. It became such a problem that the Catholic Church began to send out bishops and priests to pray for the convents to get them to stop, and when that didn't work, they began holding exorcisms to get the women to stop biting each other. When that didn't work, they did the thing that the village from the meowing nuns did, where they got a military to come and threaten to whip the nuns, only this time they didn't threaten, they straight up started flogging nuns, and that got everyone to stop. This one to me is more impressive than other cases similar to it, because this wasn't just people doing something as a troll or as a joke. They were performing exorcisms and physically being beat, and they would not quit biting each other. And also, to the credit of the soldiers who beat them, as well as the priests and bishops and all that, I couldn't find any records if this was like a playful bite, like a non-painful thing, or if they were like beginning to rip skin out of random people, because if it was the latter, I also would have held an exorcism. We are now on to Tier 3. The Blackburn faintings occurred in the UK in 1965 when a group of school children were outside waiting for Princess Margaret to show up. Specifically, they were waiting by the Blackburn Cathedral in the middle of the hot sun. After a delayed arrival, which took several hours, several of the children, 140 in fact, passed out due to heat exhaustion. Now, that's all well and good and understandable. However, what's odd is the next day at school, when in perfectly normal conditions, 98 other children passed out as well. And then the next day more did, and the next day more, and eventually by the end of the week, over 300 children who attended the school near Blackburn Cathedral all fainted due to hearing stories of the children who originally fainted. There was no reason given to the faintings after that of the heat exhaustion, and it's believed another psychosomatic disease simply caused these kids to pass out after hearing that their classmates had also passed out. So Irish fright takes a little bit of history to explain. So James II was the King of England in the 1680s. He was generally despised by Protestant England, who felt that he was too violent and willing to kill the people at any time. However, James's daughter Mary was a Protestant herself and was in fact married to a man known as William of Orange, and it was believed that if the country could just wait on him to die, whenever Mary comes to power, everything will be okay. However, tensions were exacerbated whenever James had a son, meaning that there was another heir to the throne he could raise. People began to panic. In the midst of the panic, James, who was trying to maintain his empire, had several Irish soldiers come to the country to maintain order. Legends of these soldiers and their brutality in combat ran throughout Protestant England, and people became increasingly afraid of their presence. On December 9th of 1688, James lost a battle with the Irish army and decided to flee the country while at the same time releasing the army from their conscript. In other words, on December 9th, James and the Irish army left the country. However, while word got around that James had left, a lot of people in England at the time did not know that the Irish army left as well. And with all of the stories of the soldiers' brutality running rampant, many feared that the Irish would strike back and destroy the people as revenge for James leaving. And on December 13th, the true effects of what's known as the Irish Fright began. Reports began to run through the countryside that the Irish, who mind you were no longer in the country, had been burning villages, destroying churches, and slaughtering people en masse. The villages began to panic and erect fortifications as well as arm themselves and wait at the walls of their town for the Irish to come invade. No one really knows where the reports came after this. A lot of people think that maybe it was pro-Mary and William propagandists who started it, but stories started coming in saying that the Irish were burning down London and they were massacring children and that they were vampires and all other means of evil you could imagine. It got so convoluted at one point that Town A would get a message that Town B had been totally destroyed and the Irish are on their way, while at the same time, Town B would get a message that Town A had been destroyed and the Irish were on the way. This went on for several weeks with patrol.
Ain't never gonna get in that position. Started. Also, people minds way too fucking fast these gun.
Leaving the towns to be on the lookout for whenever the Irish invade, which led to several awkward interactions where two patrols from different towns would run into each other and be like, "Oh, I thought the Irish got you," and they'd say, "No, I thought they got you," and they'd go, "Man, these guys are so good, we got us and we didn't even know we'd been got." Thankfully, there was no stories, at least to my knowledge, of this leading to any massacres or people freaking out and killing other people or whatever. And Mary and William took the throne, and this entire thing is known in history as the Glorious Revolution. So it went surprisingly well for a bunch of scared British people pointing guns at each other. The 2008 Congo football riots. And I emphasize again, like I said at the beginning, I'm not saying this to disrespect anyone's religion or belief. This is the funniest thing I've read in a long time. On September the 14th, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there was a soccer game to us Americans, but a football game being played between two of the local teams. Near the end of the game, the goalkeeper on the losing team was accused of casting a spell in order to win the game, and they said that that was a penalty and should get him ejected. This quickly turned into a large riot, which whenever police showed up to try to contain the situation, the entire audience began pelting them with stones. The police did not like this and fired tear gas into the crowd, which caused a mass stampede and then several riots within the city over the next several days. Now, I understand this is kind of breaking my rule that I set up at the beginning, that I didn't want to talk about the ones that were just people overreacting to like a single event or a single set of panic. But the reason I want to mention it is supposedly this was a recorded event, which means somewhere out there there is a video of a goalkeeper casting a spell on the field and the audience losing their minds because that should be a penalty, followed by everyone pulling out stones that they brought to a soccer game and attacking the police. So I'm putting out a bounty of $500 for anyone who can find me a clip of the goalkeeper casting a spell. And I know I'm not saying this to be offensive at all. I understand I'm not disrespecting anyone's beliefs or anything like that. However, considering it was in the middle of a soccer game and this wasn't like in a church or with sacraments or whatever have you, It was a goalie standing on a soccer field. I just need to know what that looks like. The Mount Pleasant, Mississippi mass drug use, that's a sentence, happened in 1976 at Mount Pleasant, Mississippi, when 15 students passed out in the middle of the school day. The police who showed up assumed that it's because they had all been using drugs and trading them with each other. However, after investigation, all of the students passed clean on their checks and there were no drugs found in the school. The symptoms of this were rather severe, with several of the 15 students convulsing and throwing up violently over the next several days. These extreme symptoms and no evidence led several parents to think that perhaps whatever drugs were being used were in the air or untraceable, or even some saying that there was a hex going around at the school, which in the coming week made 300 of the 900 student population stay home for fear of whatever was going on. However, to this day, despite the extreme lengths of the symptoms, nothing was ever found, and it seems to be a case of mass delusion. 2007 Boston Moon Night Panic. Like the Congo one, this is technically cheating because it's panic over an event and not like shared delusion or whatever, but I don't care, it's too funny not to mention. On January the 31st of 2007, several LED placards were set up around Boston to promote the new Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie. However, when the Boston police saw these, they assumed that they were IEDs. They shut down roadways, called in bomb squads, had helicopters everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I have one of the funniest videos in regards to that. Hold on. I don't know how recent this was, but I don't care. It's one of the funniest. So, someone dies in this video, I should say, first. But I don't care. It is one of the funniest videos I've ever fucking seen. I don't care. So goddamn funny. I'll send it to you on Discord. It's fucking hilarious.
EMT teams, the whole 9 yards. After retrieving one of the IEDs and trying to analyze what the weird symbol on it was, it took hours until a young staffer who was working at the mayor's office saw a picture and said, "Oh, that's the Aqua Teen Hunger Force guy." The sheer absurdity, and the reason I'm including it as mass hysteria, is because of the extreme lengths of stupidity the Boston Police Department went to maintain their dignity in this scenario. If a police department was like, "Oh,
That is one of the funniest videos. It's literally like, you're not a witch. Get back here, you dumb bitch. Like, he was literally, like, I don't know how much more a man could sound like he wants to help somebody that dumb. I'm not gonna run in and help her, but I'm gonna call her a dumb bitch.
we were dumb, my bad, guys," I wouldn't think anything of it. But listen to this. During this whole hoopla, they arrested 2 men who were installing one of the placards, and whenever the men told them, "I work for Cartoon Network, this is just an advertising campaign," the police said that they were looking into their alibi. In their official press report, after Cartoon Network had said this was just an advertisement, our bad to the police, in the press report, the police said that they were investigating this because it had circuits, lights, and wires, quote, "like a bomb." You know what else has circuits, lights, and wires? A light. They then spent the entire press conference talking about how they'll get to the bottom of whatever intent was given.
Oh, she stopped it. It stopped at the bottom. Like, don't worry about the fact she got buried alive, but she got, oh, for sure.
To these devices placed around the city, and that they still believed it could be a IED because it was placed in, quote, "high traffic areas." You know what else goes in high traffic areas? Advertisements. They concluded by saying, we are looking into if this is either.
Dang. Republicans really going with the narrative. Like, one of them posts is like, uh, is this who y'all want? Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. Hey, America, you really ready to vote for Montel Williams arm candy? And they just posted a picture of uh Kamala Harris looking sexy as fuck. They don't got nothing on her. They pissed too. Fucking Donald Trump yesterday, he went on his Truth Social app and said, what is it? He said, so, you're forced to spend time and money on fighting Crooked Joe. He polls badly after having a terrible debate and quits the race. Now we have to start all over again. Shouldn't the Republican Party be reimbursed for fraud in that everybody around Joe, including his doctors and the fake news media, knew he was not capable of running for being president? Just asking. He's just mad that now he's the old fuck.
Either a hoax or something else entirely. And then, to this day, they don't refer to it as a bomb scare. They refer to it as a bomb hoax, implying that Cartoon Network tried to threaten the city of Boston. The most frustrating part about it is the police and Homeland Security made Cartoon Network pay out $2 million for damages, or in other words, making them look like an idiot on television. So while not along my definition of mass hysteria as being an unexplainable circumstance in human history, this was too hilarious not to mention, so you're welcome. The face scratcher hysteria happened in northern India in 2002. Several people in villages within North India said that at night a small glowing unidentifiable creature would fly at them before scratching up their face and leaving. Specifically, they said that this creature emanated a red and blue glowing light and moved too fast to get a good view of. People in the village said that up to 7 deaths were caused by this face-scratching creature. The local police who investigated said that they were investigating if it was a, quote, insect that was put together by the government in order to attack and terrorize small villagers. The only official death that occurred during any of this was when a mob of people began attacking a police station, saying that the government was building the face scratchers, to which whenever they broke in the front door of the police station, a police officer fired and killed one of the protesters. And there was reportedly 3 deaths caused by people falling from buildings in the middle of all this panic. I don't know what's happening, since this is the second time that 3 people have died in India from falling off of a building due to a hysteria caused by an impossibly small creature attacking humans that was also blamed on the government and police. There's probably something there, I'm just not getting it right now. And similar to the Monkey Man of Delhi that I mentioned earlier, vigilante groups got together and began patrolling the streets trying to kill the face scratcher. Although, as you can imagine, nothing was ever found, and it's chalked up to just be a huge misunderstanding. We are now on to tier 4, and I promise you they just keep getting weirder. Puppy pregnancy syndrome, yep, is a delusion that is most often seen in villages around northern India. However, other cases similar to it, if you could call it that, have been reported in some areas of the United States and Europe as well. Pretty much any region that has a lot of traditional folklore and not a lot of modern education or understanding of anatomy. It is the belief that after someone has been bit by a dog, that they are now pregnant with puppies. And while you may be thinking, is this just like a couple absolutely out of their mind people who say this every year? It has been known to affect tens of thousands of people across small villages in the world. These people report that they can see the puppies moving inside of them and can hear them barking. And if you're thinking, is this just women that feel that way? No, men too. And as a matter of fact, it's believed by several of these small villages that it is okay if a woman gets it, but if a man gets it, he will die because he cannot survive the birthing process. The reason I mention it in India specifically is because several of these villages have herbal healers who will give people concoctions of herbs and other things that they say will dissolve the puppies and not, kill them during the process. However, this has historically proven to be incredibly dangerous because the majority of people who are bit by dogs are bit by stray dogs that often have rabies. And many of these healers tell patients that if they accept modern medicine, it will counteract the herbal medicine that got rid of the puppies in them. So hundreds of people have died due to rabies because they will not take modern medicine because they are afraid it will counteract the puppies inside of them, and that's where the danger of puppy pregnancy syndrome comes from. And I want to emphasize again, this is an incredibly small decimal of a percentage of one of the largest countries in the world. However, it is enough of a problem that doctors within India are trying to get education centers and better information out to these groups of people because every year hundreds of people die literally due to ignorance. Well, literally to the rabies, but it's the ignorance that makes it fatal. The Liverpool leprechauns began on June the 30th of 1964 in Liverpool. It started when a young boy ran through the street saying that he had spotted a leprechaun. Over the next several days, other boys said that they had also spotted leprechaun, and this caused several adults to get in on the craze. On the 1st of July, there were such large crowds around the parks in Liverpool that the police had to show up and disperse them as they were way over capacity, and kids were destroying bushes and flowers trying to find the leprechauns. And throughout the streets of Liverpool, first aid stations had to be built due to all of the children who were tumbling down hills and hurting themselves trying to look for these leprechauns. It is believed that thousands of people, children and adults alike, were all on the leprechaun hunt for at least a week in Liverpool before the craze spread to other nearby cities, and there were stories of children running amok in churches